Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Sorry I haven't uploaded in a little while. In today's video we're gonna be making a codes system so you can input like a secret code and it'll give you some boost or whatever. So the first thing we should create, if you haven't already, is to create your stats or your leader stats, since we're gonna have to have something that we want to increase when the player redeems the code or some boost. So this is just getting when the player joins the game or when the player is added, and then we're attaching this tag to the player, so that player who just joined, we can identify them as just this player tag. Now we're gonna make a new variable for stats, and we're gonna make a new instance. So we're making a variable called stats, and it's gonna be equivalent to a new instance, which is a folder. This is the same thing as pressing the plus somewhere and then inserting a folder, and then we're going to be parenting it to that new player who just joined. And then we're going to do stats.name equals and then leader stats. So when we're doing stats.name, that's just setting this new folder that we created, it's renaming it to leader stats. That's what that's doing. And now inside of our folder, I'm going to keep that there, we're going to make a value, which for me I'm going to make it cache, so that's what the codes are going to add. So local cache equals instance.new, oh I can't type, and then number value, and we're going to parent it to stats. So we're making a new variable called cache, making a new instance which is a number value, so it's like going into our folder and then hitting a plus and inserting a number value. And since this is our parent, this is what the number value is going to be put into, so the stats folder. The reason we're using a number value instead of an int value is because number values have a much higher limit to how much they can hold compared to an int value. So then we're going to do cache.value equals 0, meaning the starting value is going to be 0. So as you can see, if we hit the number value and we go to its value, it's 0. So we're just editing that property, and then cache.name equals cache. So same thing as naming the leader stats, except we're just going to rename this value to cache. So basically this is going to be inside of our player, except we're just making that with the script instead of manually adding it in. So now that we have our leader stats, we can start on the code system. So first thing we're going to do is make a UI for it. So we're going to go to starter GUI, insert a screen GUI, and then we're going to put a frame. I'm not going to make a toggle for this, or I might, but I'm just going to put this right here, and then I'm just going to make the layout. So inside of our frame, I'm going to insert a button. This button is going to be the submit button. So these are basically the essentials for a code system, unless you're going to make it in a different way. This is how I'm going to be doing it. And then in the frame, I'm also going to insert a text box. This text box is where the player is going to input the code. So we're just going to scale that up like this. So we're going to rename the text box to code input, and I'm going to rename the frame to codes. And then I guess this can just be main, as it is our main screen GUI. So inside of our codes, I'm going to add one more thing, which will be a text label. And this is just telling the player, like, let's say, check out the Twitter for codes or something like that. You can design this however you'd like. If you want to make the corners rounded, you can insert a UI corner, and then you can set how much radius you want, let's say 25, and you can add it to everything else. Just gonna do this. You can add a border using a UI stroke, and then just set it to border. I'm just gonna add that to everything as well. And I'm gonna make that actually larger. And so I'm just gonna change the code input text to be scaled just so we can see it, and the submit button just to say submit. So this is what it's gonna be for me. You can design this however you'd like. So now to get to actual scripting. So first thing we're gonna do is in replicated storage, we're gonna hit the plus and insert a module script. We're using this module script to save like all of the codes and everything that we want the player to be able to use. So I'm going to rename this module script to codes, and then instead of local module, I'll change it to local codes and return codes. So inside of our codes table, we're going to make a few things. So the first part, we're going to put brackets and then quotations, and this is where you can put in your first code name. So let's just say your first code is release. Now we can make this equal to another set of information, and inside of this, what we can do is we can do rewards equals, and I'm just gonna do one more table. So this code will have these rewards. So the first reward is gonna be, so in our rewards we're going to set how much we want for each value. So let's just set this, so I'm just gonna set this to 100, and then if you want to add more, just add a comma after it, go down the line and then increase the number, and you can continue that. So let's just actually name this reward amounts, and then let's make another one called rewards. So reward amounts is how much we're gonna get for each reward, and then rewards is gonna be the name of the stat that we want to increase. So let's say 1 can be equal to, and then let's say cash. Since that is our only value, we're gonna keep it to 1. Actually, we might make another one. So let me just explain this further. So in our release table, we have something called rewards. The first thing we put in rewards is the name of the stat we want to increase or we want to apply a boost to. And the rewards amounts, this will assign how much we want to increase that by. So as you can see, 1 is assigned to 100 and 1 is also assigned to cash. So 1 is going to increase cash by 100, and let's say we have 2. So I'm just going to make this say like ultra cash. So ultra cash will be increased by 200, and make sure to add a comma after every one you add. So, and you want to add a comma after the table. So after you set this up, I'm going to real quick create something called ultra cash, since I want to showcase more than one reward. So we could just copy and paste this, but I'll just type it out. So local ultra cash equals instance.new number value, putting it into stats, ultra cash.value equals 0 to start off with, and ultra cash.name equals ultra cash. Make sure that these two values are capitalized like the same way it is for the stats over here, just to make sure no problems occur. So now that we have our first code, we're just going to add one more. So we could just copy and paste this, but I'll type it out. So every time you're going to add a new code, make sure to put a comma, and then you can put, I'm going to put 2 spaces, and you can type your next code. So this code is going to be, let's say, cash. So this is just going to be regular cash. I'm going to say 100 cash. Let's just 250 cash equals, and then a new table, and then obviously rewards, same as we did above. So the first reward is going to be obviously for cash, and that will be the only reward since this is 250 cash. And then we're going to do rewards amount equals, and then 1 will be equal to 250. So that's how much we want to increase it by. So I'm just going to write some marks. So this is going to be the code name, code rewards, or slash what you want to increase in the player, and then this is going to be how much you want to increase each stat by. So now that we have ourselves 2 codes, we can move on to making these codes actually give the reward. So first thing we'll do in replicated storage, we're going to add a remote event, and this is going to be submit code. So this is what's going to happen when someone submits the code. And then in server script service, we're going to hit the plus and insert a server script, and I'm just going to also rename this to submit code. So now we're going to put this submit code remote into a variable. So local submit code equals game.replicated storage, wait for child, submit code. So this is making a variable called submit code, and then we're waiting for a child inside of replicated storage. So game, which is basically the Explorer tab, .replicated storage, which is one of the panels in here. We're going to wait for a child named submit code, and the reason why we're waiting for a child is we want to make sure that this is loaded into the game before we try to do anything with it, because if it's not loaded into a game, then we're just going to get an error, since this is just going to be nil. So we can do submit code on server event connect function. So when this code is fired to the server, it's going to do whatever's in here. Now the first parameter will always be player. As you can see from the little note, the first parameter is always going to be the player that it is fired from, or the players that it's going to affect, and then you can add more parameters that you'd like. So I'm just going to add a parameter called code. So then let's go ahead and set up our submit button real quick, as there's not much we have to do. So go to your submit button in your codes frame, hit the plus, insert a text label, or not a text label but a local script. I'm just going to rename this trigger. Then we can just do script.parent.mouse button when click to connect function. So the script's parent is what the script is inside of. So this is the parent and this is the child of the script. So script.parent would be the button, and then when mouse button 1 is clicked, which is the left mouse button, then it'll run whatever's in here. So let's say I click the button with the left mouse button, anything that I put in here will be run. So let's make another variable, or the same variable as we made in the other script for the submit code. So local submit code equals game.replicated storage, wait for child, submit code. So once again, we're making a variable called submit code. It's going to go into replicated storage and wait for a child called submit code. And the way variables work, let's say I type in submit code. Basically what it's going to do is replace all of this with whatever our value is. So all of this right here, this one text called submit code, is going to be replaced with this. So this is how it's going to, like, this is what the code is going to read it as, but we're just shortening it so we don't have to type this out every single time. So now we can fire submit code. So submit code, fire server. So this is firing it to the server, and we have a parameter that we need to fill. So that parameter is code, which we're just going to fill that to whatever code the person typed into the code input box. So we're just going to do script.parent.parent.codeinput.text. So script's parent is the submit button, and then the parent of the submit button, or what it's in, is the code's frame, and then we have something called code input inside of that frame, and we're just getting the text of that input. So whatever the player typed in, since if somebody types something in here like this, it changes the text on the text box. So we just want to get whatever they typed in and send it to the roam mode event. So now that we've got that, something we can do is, so we're just going to make a local code data, and we're just going to keep that there. So if we go back to our module script, first thing we want to do is find to see if the code that the person submitted is inside of this module script. So like, we want to make sure the player can't type in any code and receive one of the rewards. They have to type in release or 250 cash. So we're going to do if, or we should actually require this module script first. So local module script equals game.replicated storage require, or wait, we actually have to do require game.replicated storage dot codes. So this is going to require all of the data that's inside of this module script. So now we can access release 250 cache and all that stuff inside of our server script. So now what we can do is if module script, and then we type in, or we're going to put in code then. So this is checking if in the module script there's something called whatever the code is, and if there is, then what we're going to do is player, or we're gonna loop through the player first. So for I, be in pairs, player, get descendants. So we're looping through everything inside of the player, or we're looping through whatever we're getting. So player get descendants is getting everything inside of the player. So like for example, in starters UI, trigger would be a descendant, since it's like, I'm not too sure how to say that, but as you can see, so this is a parent, this is a parent, this is a parent, this is a parent, so that would be a descendant. It's like your family's descendants, I guess. I'm not too sure how to say that. So we're just getting everything inside of the player, and we're gonna loop through it all. So what we can do is if v dot name, so we want to check if the name, or we're actually going to do string dot lower v dot name, just in case we mess up the capitalization in our codes. And I'm going to close these two. If string dot lower v dot name is equivalent to module script code, and then one of the rewards, so dot rewards, so that we can just put rewards, and then 1, or we should actually loop through all of the rewards as well. So for I, be in pairs, module script code, rewards, do, and then we can put that in there. So we're looping through all of the rewards inside of that one code, and if there is something inside of the player named that reward, so we're just gonna do B. So B is gonna be like 1 or 2. So if something inside of the player is named either cache or auto cache, then we're gonna do v.value plus equals, and then module script code reward amounts, as we named it here, reward amounts, and then we can do I, for instance, or actually we can do b dot, yeah, we can just do b, and we're just going to change this to b dot value. So let's see if I can break this down. So we're looping through the player, everything inside of the player, and then we're looping through all of the rewards that are for that code. And then if something in the player is equivalent to the name, or if something in the player is equivalent to either 1 or 2 inside of our rewards, or whatever is inside of our rewards, then we're going to get that value and increase it by however much the reward is for that code. So let's go ahead and see if anything happens when we do this. So let's just comment this out. We might not actually have to need or use that. And actually, before we do go ahead and test this, I just noticed there is something that we did do wrong, or I did do wrong. So b.value wouldn't actually be equal to cache or ultra cache. B alone would be equal to these. So we're gonna switch this to b, and that means b right here wouldn't be 1 or 2. So we're going to have to change that up. And I just noticed something. I wrote reward amounts here, but if we go to our codes, I put an S, but I didn't put one here. So I'm just gonna add an S here and an S in the script. So make sure it is the exact same it is in your codes. So rewards amount, same capitalization, exact same letters. You could just right click it and copy, or press Ctrl C and go over here and just paste it, or you can type it in exactly how it is, but make sure it's capitalized exactly how it is in the script. So now that we've just made sure of that, we're going to make a new variable for this number. And actually, real quick, we're going to make this be lowercase. So let's just real quick do string dot lower, and then we're going to put b. So this is making this, a string is a text, so something like this, so like hello world, this would be a string as it's a text, and we're just going to make sure every letter in it is lowercase. So let's say we write like hello, and we do a string dot lower, that's just going to go to hello without any capitals. and that's what we want. Since we're doing the same thing with this name over here, let's say this name is cash and we make a lowercase, and let's say cash is over here in our rewards. The script wouldn't register it because we're checking a lowercase, a full lowercase thing compared to something with a capital C, and in programming it has to be the same capitalization for the majority of things. So we're just going to make sure that this is changed to a lowercase since we're changing this name to a lowercase. So now that we've done that, we're going to make a new variable to display 1 and 2, so we can make the first stat get the first amount of the reward, and then the second stat get the second amount it's meant to receive, or however many stats you're increasing. So we're going to make a new variable. Instead of b, let's say z. So I'm just going to input z right here, but now we actually have to make a variable for this. So right before this if statement, I'm going to do local z equals 1. Make sure it's capitalized just like the z, or lowercase, depends on how you want to write it. So we're making a new variable, and this is going to store 1. Z will be equivalent to 1. So now that z is 1, we're going to increase z by 1 at the end. So 0 plus, or z plus, equals 1. So basically, the first loop, this is going to be 1. Actually, yeah, so the first loop, this will be 1, and then we're going to go through all of this stuff, and we're going to increase it by 1 once again when it's done. So this is going to go through 1 and 2. This is going to repeat for however many there is listed inside of our rewards. So now that we've got that finished, we can now go ahead and test it. So let's go ahead and go to our place and hit the play button, and let's see what happens. Now there is one thing that we will add. The player can now redeem the code as many times as they like. So we're going to make sure that that does not happen, since we only want them to redeem it once. Since if you can redeem the code 100 times, well, you can get a lot more than the reward we really want the player to. So let's type in one of our codes, which one of them would be release, and let's hit submit. And as you can see, we got 100 cash and 100 ultra cash, just as we wrote here. Or actually, we put 2 for ultra cash, but we'll change that. So let's try 250 cash, which gives us 250 cash. But as you can see, the player can kind of submit this code as many times as they want, and well, we don't exactly want that to happen. Unless you do want that to happen, then you can just leave it here. But we're going to make sure the player cannot redeem it hundreds of times and get, well, more than they're meant to get. So one thing we're going to do is, let's go to our stats script. Now there is 2 ways we can do this, but we're just going to do this the first way. So what we're going to do is make a stat, or a bool value. A bool value is a true or false. So we're going to make a value for each one of these codes to deem if the player has redeemed it or not. So let's just do for I, or actually we have to get the module script first. So at the top of the script, let's go down a few lines, and let's do local codes equals game dot replicated storage, wait for child codes, and let's actually write require, and then we can put all of this. You can cut something by either right clicking it and hitting cut, or you can select it and then press Ctrl X. Then you can paste it into your require. So this is going to require all of the data that is inside of our module script. So now we can do for I v in pairs codes do. So this is going to loop through everything that's inside of our codes. So like release and 250 cash, that is all going to be looped through. So now we can make a new stat and set that to the name. So we can do local new code equals instance.new bool value, and we're just going to put this in the player. We could put this in a folder called codes. So actually, let's just do that real quick. So before we do anything else, go back to the top of the script, and we're just going to do local codes f equals instance.new folder player. So we're making a variable for codes, we're making a new instance, which is a folder, and putting it inside of the player, and then codes f dot name f.name equals codes. So now we can actually parent this to the codes folder, so it's a little bit more organized in the player. Now we can do new code dot name equals v. So v is going to be either, since right now for me I have release and 250 cache, v is going to be release and then it's going to loop again, and then v is also going to be 250 cache. So that's what we're setting the name to. And then new code dot value equals false. So have they claimed, this is going to be like deeming if they have claimed the code or not, and we're going to set that to false. If you do want to save that, so when the player rejoins they can't claim it again, I do have a video on data store that you can use to save all of these values. So I will put that in the description if you would like to see that. So now that we have all of this, we can go back to our submit code and we can do a quick check. So outside of all of this, what we're going to do is we're going to do if player wait for child codes and wait for child code, but instead of quotations we're just going to put in this code variable we have here, or parameter, and then dot value equals false. Then so we're going to go into the player and then we're going to look for something inside of the codes folder that is named whatever code the player inputted, and if there is something there, we're going to check its value, and if the value is false, so if the code hasn't been redeemed basically, then, and we can select all of this by starting from the bottom or from the top and moving our cursor up while holding left mouse button. Then you can right click it and press cut, or control X, go up here, right click it and press paste, or you can do control V. So now everything here, the code will only be redeemed if the player has not already redeemed it, or if that code value is false. But here's the thing, we actually have to set it to true when the player redeems it. So if it is false, then if the code is inside of the module script, actually we should check if it's in the module script first, so we can actually put this outside. So once again you can cut this out and put it outside, and then I'm just going to put that up one line by pressing tab. Tab goes up a few lines, space obviously goes up only once. So we're just gonna do, we can copy this or we can retype it, and we're gonna do player wait for child codes wait for child code dot value equals true. So we're going into the player, we're waiting for a child called codes, which is what we named our codes folder over here in our stats. Then we're waiting for a child with the same name as the code that the player inputted, and we're setting the value to true as to indicate that the player did already claim the code. And if you saw before, when we were redeeming our release code, which as you can see has 2 rewards, it only gave the first reward twice. So it gave 100 to both cache and ultra cache, but we want ultra cache to get 200 and not 100. And that happened because we're actually making the variable again and setting it to 1. So we should probably put this variable out, and we could put this in a different location. So we could put this up here, which will be 1 line back, since if in the player something is the name, then yeah, we're just gonna set it to 1, and let's see what happens. Before we do test it one more time, we're gonna change this v to an I, since we want to get the instance and not the value, since the value would just be a table. So make sure you go to your stats script, go to where you looped through all of the codes, and change this v to an I. So now we can go ahead and test our game. So we can hit the play, and let's let this load up. And now we can test out our code. So let's try our first code, release. We hit submit, we get 100 cache and 200 ultra cache as we listed here. Let's try and redeem it again. As you can see, it doesn't redeem. If we go over to the player and I go into me and I go into codes, as you can see we have 250 cache and release. And if we go to the properties of release, you can see that it is now true. So now the player cannot redeem that code. So if we go to 250 cache and we type in 250 cache here, as you can see when we hit submit, that value is ticked to true, we get our 250 cash and we can no longer claim our code. So now we have finished our code system. Once again, if you want to save these, because if the player rejoins, these will be set back to false, so the player can redeem them once again after rejoining. If you want to save them, I do have a video on how to save values in the player if you'd like to see that. So yeah, sorry if this video had some like poor explanations. I did come up with all of this on the spot since I did not have too much time to plan this video. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video, and yeah, see ya.